Story 1. You have no idea what you are wrong about. Before you start yelling at someone, find out how wrong you are. It might sound silly, but outside of online comments, I have not been in a fight in years. Either I am right and I can cite my sources, or I find out I am wrong and save myself a lot of embarrassment. Story 2. When I was a child, my father told me that if you can dance, the women will love you. Unfortunately, he could neither dance nor teach me that skill. Story 3. It didn't sound foolish, but it was so simple it made me feel foolish. You do not have to give so much of yourself to people. It is your choice. My upbringing gave me something of a savior complex. I would worry about people and want to help solve their problems, but it caused me a lot of stress, drained me, and only occasionally made a difference because people tend not to want to actually make changes. They mainly want to vent and keep doing what they are doing. That advice from a therapist had a big impact on me because I had spent so long trying to make others happy that it became a habit. It helped me break the cycle. Story 4. Just eat the food. My anthropology professor told me that, and it paid off. When you are in a culture that is foreign to you and are offered food, just eat the food. It shows them that you want to learn their culture and are willing to try new things. It opens up conversations. I have been following this practice for almost 30 years, and it has always paid off. Story 5. No soup is eaten as hot as it was cooked. I was very quick, restless, and impatient in my 20s. That advice sounded just stupid for someone like me. The first time I used it, it changed my life. It taught me patience and brought calmness to my life. I still live by it. Story 6. Love is not enough. People may think this means you just don't love them enough. The truth is, some relationships are completely doomed to failure due to life circumstances, differences in major issues like religion or having children, or even financial situations. I have wasted years in relationships with good people that logically would never have worked because of a situation I knew from the beginning. Story 7. If you do not know where you want to go, any path is equally good. This is the only advice I would give someone under 30. Story 8. A couple of my favorites. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Basically, do not expend all your resources trying to do things exactly right, because some things need to be done more than they need to be perfect. Necessary, true, kind. This is a sort of checklist or flowchart for talking to people, where you ask yourself, is it necessary? Followed by, is it true? And then, is it kind? The goal is to meet at least 2 out of 3 whenever you can. I may be misremembering the order, but that is the concept. Story 9. Love yourself. I did not understand the meaning when I was young. However, it is very profound and truly something that will help you continue with your life despite challenges. Story 10. When you feel insecure, look at yourself in the mirror daily and say you look great. Fake it until you make it works. Story 11. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it is probably a duck. If it is too good to be true, it probably is. Those are what my dad taught me about trusting my instincts. Story 12. Slow is fast. Fast is slow. Take a moment to assess what you are about to do. Do it patiently and deliberately. When you rush, you are more likely to make a mistake, which you will then have to undo or correct before continuing. Story 13. If all you have is a hammer, master hammering. You do not always have what you actually need to get the job done. But often nobody is going to be handing you more. Learn how best to apply what you already have, and you will be surprised by how often you can adapt skills from one area to another. Story 14. Sometimes in life you just have to be selfish. I did, and now I have a well-paid job. I worried I would leave my colleagues at my previous workplace worse off. I knew my intention was never to do so. Now I am doing extremely well for myself, and many of the issues I had with debt have been resolved. Story 15. Stop caring about what other people think about you. If you would not go to that person for advice, why would you just accept their criticism? Why does some random person's opinion matter to you anyway? You will likely never even see them again in your life. Story 16. No matter where you go, there you are. It is a corny throwaway line from a 1980s cult classic movie, but for me, it cemented where I was. It made me realize that most of the problems in my life were actually caused by me, and I was just taking them with me when I thought I was escaping them. That is why they kept happening. Story 17. The Keep It Simple Stupid Principle. A retired nurse turned professor taught me this. Later in life, a mentor also reminded me of it. It is honestly hard to keep things simple in such a complex society, but sometimes direct and simple things are enough. Nothing else needs to be said or sugar-coated. Story 18. Either you die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. This sounded asinine to the young man. Even Jonathan Nolan said he approached Christopher and said, "This is a dumb line." But Christopher insisted it stay in the film. Now, all these years later, Jonathan says it is one of the best lines in fiction, and he nearly resents that his brother wrote it and he did not. Story 19. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Meaning, the most obvious answer or solution is likely the correct one. Story 20. Occasionally, I think of the Dwight Schrute line. Whenever I am about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing. It is a simple line. For activities like coding, shopping for something unfamiliar, do-it-yourself projects, or cooking, it can prompt you to pause and think, doing it this way is obviously the next step. But that is exactly how a foolish person would do it. It is a memorable way to remind yourself to pause before drilling a hole in a wall, overwriting a file, mixing cleaning chemicals, buying a timeshare, or attempting to balance one thing on top of another. Story 21. When my partner first told me to invest tens of thousands of pounds into Bitcoin, saying it would all be worthwhile someday. At the time, £1 could buy several Bitcoins. Now one Bitcoin can be exchanged for tens of thousands of pounds. It is a surprising world that we live in. Story 22. Don't make a mess in your own bed, was shouted at me when I was a careless 14-year-old by a well-meaning but entirely profane shift supervisor because I was making mistakes. The meaning is, don't do stupid things in your own spaces, your work, home, neighborhood, city, or country. Respect these places and think before you act because you want to actually live in them. Story 23. That video where a young man asks his father for relationship advice, and the father simply demands an apology without explaining the reason. After some time, when the young man apologizes, the father says, "Congratulations, you are now ready for a relationship." Story 24. You're young, you can afford to lose it all. An old man told me when I was 19. I learned the hard way that he was right in some ways. Since then, I have applied this to some pivoting decisions I have had to make in my life, relationships, career, investments, and so on. When I sit down and appreciate life, I think back on that moment. Story 25. Imagining the voice of Michael Ehrmantraut telling you what to do. All right, this is what you are going to do. You are going to get the socks and put them in the laundry. Story 26. My mom always said, play with dirt, and you'll smell like dirt. It's a lesson in choosing to associate with quality people. Story 27. Learn to say no. No one needs your help out of obligation. Love is not unconditional. Love those who love you, and learn to say nothing. If someone starts to yell at you, offend you, or speak lies, do not react. That is the goal of these types of people. Be better and remain silent. Let them say what they want. Think about what they are saying and understand it is not your fault they are angry. They are angry because they want to be. Let them dig their own hole and starve of attention. Without ammunition to fire at you, without fuel for their anger, they are just insulting you and attacking you defenseless. They will learn from their mistakes or remain alone until they do. Everyone can change if they want to change. It is not your decision when they will want to change. Not everyone deserves better, and not everyone will have a good life or the best. Some people are blind to the worst. Some were blinded by someone they trusted, by bad people, or by their own parents. Understanding people is probably impossible without drastic changes. First, let them break down completely so you can help them from the ground up. And only if you want to, as it is not your responsibility to look out for anyone except your children. Finally, the wrongdoings of a person are the fault of their parents and teachers. They may be wrong, but most are simply ignorant. You should not be angry with them. See them as children, innocent in their own ignorance. Pity them because they will never truly be like us. They have passed the point of learning the easy way. They had bad parents and will have a difficult life. Be thankful for what your parents teach you and that you do not need to learn the hard way. Most of these ideas come from my grandfather and mother. They were originally a single phrase, but I cannot remember it exactly, so I wrote what I remembered. Story 28. The best way to handle bullies is just to ignore them. I only wish you could have explained to me why. It did not make sense then, but now it does. Story 29. It's okay to do the wrong thing sometimes as long as you do not fool yourself into thinking that it is right. Story 30. I always tell people in their late teens and early 20s to date themselves. It sounds corny and I feel silly saying it every time, but I swear by this advice. Story 31. It's better to be alone than to surround yourself with toxic people. When I was young, I was constantly around my group of friends, at school, after school, and online, and the thought of having no friends was scary for me. But as we got older, my friends slowly became arrogant and obnoxious. They never had my back, were dismissive, and gradually chose a self-destructive life involving drugs and alcohol. They were not the same friends I knew as a kid. I tried to stick it out, hoping they would get better, but they only made me seriously unhappy. Eventually, I decided to stop hanging out with them after dealing with too many of their problems. The moment I did, they showed their true colors and became toxic. They tried to throw negativity my way, but I ignored them and focused on my own life. It was difficult, but over time, I started to feel better about myself and grew more confident in my own company. I didn't need approval from anyone. I will save the full story, but I managed to achieve something that none of my friends did. Years ago, I ran into one of my old friends. He apologized for his past actions and confessed that he had gone down a path of drug use. Story 32. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. As an overthinker who puts things off, sometimes you just have to do the task. Story 33. Sometimes the solution does not have to be directly connected to the problem. Sometimes the solution for a depressing life situation, especially one that cannot be changed, could be to get a dog or to sign up for dance lessons. Story 34. Do not sweat the petty stuff. Pet the sweaty stuff. Do not worry about the unimportant things. Just move past them and get on with it. Story 35. If a dog sees a rolling ball, it will instinctively run after it. We humans tend to do the same. Next time you see a ball, which represents development of any kind, rolling, first check where it came from, then check where it is going. At that point, you decide whether to follow it or not. Story 36. What is on your mind is how you see the world. If you think positively, the world will seem full of opportunities, but if you always think pessimistically, the world will seem colorless. Story 37. Drinking from the far side of a glass will cure hiccups. Sounds strange. It looks strange. Until you learn how to do it, you might end up pouring water up your nose. But once you figure it out, it works better than anything I have ever tried. I think it has to do with forcing the muscles in your esophagus to work against gravity to push the water into your stomach. Story 38. Life is 90% what happens to you and 10% how you react to it. In other words, you are not in control. The sooner you recognize this, the quicker you can move on to the next thing. Story 39. Taking the time to stretch before activities or in the morning helps prevent injuries and improves flexibility. Story 40. Consistency is more important than intensity. I am aware that people know this and it is obvious at this point for those who want to be productive, but I feel they do not implement it properly. You can accomplish a lot and reach your goals by allotting some time every day or every other day. Do not let anyone tell you it is not enough because it will be enough in the long run, especially as you increase the time allotted to that task after some time when you adjust. Story 41. You do not need as much money as you think. Young adults need to sit down and carefully consider their goals and where they want to be in 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years, as well as the kind of life they want to lead. Story 42. Pay yourself first. I never understood it until I paid off everything and started maxing out my 401k, Roth IRA, and health savings account. Story 43. The answer is always no if you do not ask. Being upfront about my wants and needs has opened many doors both personally and professionally. People cannot read minds, and what is the worst that will happen if you ask? They will say no, but the answer is always no if you do not ask. Story 44. If you surround yourself with negative influences, you will be affected by them. Story 45. Haha. For me, it was just do it. I thought it was super cheesy at first, but once I started applying it to small tasks like going to the gym or starting a project, I realized how much of a difference it made. Sometimes overthinking is the biggest roadblock. Story 46. 1. Life is short, so you should try to make the most of it and not be afraid to fail or try new things. It's strange how my childhood felt long, but after finishing school, the years seemed to fly by much faster. Another important thing is to find a partner, even if you don't want to have children. You do not want to be an elder suffering from medical conditions with no one to help or support you. I work with elderly people often, and some spend their remaining years in loneliness, misery, and suffering. It is terrible to see, and often hidden because many put on a happy face and act okay for short periods when interacting with others. These are usually the ones who can afford assistance or qualify for government support. Spend meaningful time with people you care about. Remember that your parents are human and can make mistakes or have difficult times. If you still have parents, uncles, aunts, or grandparents, do not just spend time with them. Ask them questions. Get to know them as real people. Avoid generic, mundane questions. Ask about their life, passions, goals, regrets, and highlights. I was young when my grandparents passed and never thought to ask these things. I love and miss them, but I wish I had the chance to really know their lives. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.